Hey, welcome everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Drone Money Podcast. Daniel, what's up? How you doing today?
I'm doing good. It is freezing here in Georgia. I mean, it's almost actually freezing.
Well, as you can see here in my tropical background,
Yeah, how's Fiji?
well, saw that there's a little non-linear skip there. Yeah, those
Yeah,
are screens. Yeah, that's great.
I didn't
Yeah,
know
welcome everyone to another episode of the Drone Money Podcast. Today we have a solo venturer coming on board to talk to us about his journey into the drone space and the drone LiDAR space. But before we do that, let's talk about a little recaps and what's going on in the world for Daniel Harrison and the community. Uh, this week, I think we crossed 5,500 members into
that.
the Facebook group, which has
Yeah,
been
awesome.
sweet. A little housekeeping on that. I think this morning we had a little chat session with someone that was disgruntled, and that was fine. You know, it's totally cool. It was a mistake on our behalf, and we just fixed it right away. So no issues, no harm, no foul. But do refrain from using profanities or bad language. Save that for Reddit. You know, we can do that in Reddit. But the way I see it is this community that we're working with here, you guys watching this, us, you know, there's only really a few handfuls of people out there doing services and actual real work with this technology. We're on the forefront of a new technology. We're trying to create new ways of doing things, trying to make, value, profit from these new tools so we can have livelihoods, have lives, feed our family with this stuff.
Right?
And I think that challenge is big enough all in itself. And we don't need to bring any other challenges to the group. So to me, I think it's just not great to tear anyone down for any reason. Not saying this person did it, not saying didn't, but I want to facilitate a group where we can all like just grow and actually enrich each other's lives. Because, something I said one time, and I think I tell you this, Daniel, before, like, sometimes people get really, like competition, in the world.
Oh, yeah.
That you see a competition, you're like, I want to beat them. I agree. I feel the competitive spirit, but at the same time, in the world of this many people, to find another human being that chose the exact same thing that you like, and
It's
they
rare.
also really like it.
Yeah.
In any other context, they should be your drinking buddy. They should be your friend. And so that's
Yeah.
kind of how I see it. It's like, if someone else chose this life path for them, like, we can do it too. Like, why aren't we friends? So
I think there's plenty
anyways,
to go around. It's not like people are struggling to find these things because the technology is making it easier. You think about where we were 5 years ago, this type of thing wouldn't exist. It was too complicated. But now really anybody can do it as long as they have the knowledge and the will to work.
the where we were 5 years ago, it's crazy to think, like, so 5 years ago, maybe
I
six,
was
7
just
years
hiring
ago,
airplanes. I didn't even hire drones, I don't think. We had photogrammetry maybe, but not for LiDAR.
I was
Yeah.
importing freaking huge ass drones, 15-foot wingspan in from China, thinking that was what a drone was.
Mm-hmm.
And like, and it is a drone, but like,
Yeah.
what we have today is just so awesome.
Yeah.
So
It's no
anyways,
Mavic.
I'm super
Yeah.
proud of where we've come.
Yeah.
A couple other pieces of news that I have this week is we will have some update on a previous guest, Robert Wilhite, that was on a little bit ago on his BVLOS waiver.
Mm-hmm.
So from what we're hearing, it sounds like he was granted a general Class G airspace BVLOS waiver for an M300. That means that man can fly anywhere he wants beyond visual line of sight with the M300 drone in Class G airspace, which is like most of the airspace. So we're gonna have some more about that, and I want to do a video. I want to fly. So if you guys have any ideas about, like, basically, I want to fly. Like, my thinking of the video is, how much can you map in one day with an M300? That's it. We just get a blank huge area, and we just see how much we can do in one day. Just crush it.
I personally think we should try to map the entire Florida Keys, and it would take 2 weeks. 1 day to map, and then the rest to hang out.
Oh yeah, this guy just wants to go to Florida Keys. So
hey, it's your credit card.
Well, so that is an update on the BVLOS episode we had a few weeks back. Look back in the history, you'll see that whole conversation happening. It's pretty cool developments, seeing what's going on. Other than that, I want to bring up the ROCK base and talk a little bit about what we've been doing on this. So I went out last week, did a couple things. So I'm going to show you a couple things. I'm going to make some videos about this, some tutorials, some how-tos. So if I can share my screen, or if someone can, I can do it. Add a stream.
You got it. Yeah.
Boom. So I went out to an NGS monument. So if you guys aren't familiar, we have these things called monuments around the country here in the U.S., around the world. There's monuments, and these are these brass discs, and typically they're, they can have a whole column of steel and concrete beneath them, drilled all the way down to bedrock sometimes. And this would be like, you want this piece of metal that you can see on top of the earth on the surface level to move with the whole tectonic plate. So if anything's moving, it's moving with it. So the accuracy of this should be very accurate. So I went out, compared. So here we can see on the bottom, these are the monument coordinates in meters and elevation in meters. So it was pretty cool. I went out with an MLID and logged into the ROCK RTK network. There was a base that was set up about 4,400 meters away, so 4.4 kilometers. And I just checked in. You can see here, I did some 5-second shots, some 15-second shots, and 30-second shots. And everything's about within a centimeter. So that was pretty sweet. Like, that's something we've been working on a lot in the background, is like getting the ROCK base really accurate. It's like when you install one, we need to figure out that location sub-centimeter, like into the millimeter levels. And then when you reference off of that point, you can then be, assured that at least the core coordinate's very accurate, that you're basing your coordinate off of. And then this is the result of using an MLID tied into that to see what the accuracy is in real time. So I think that's really cool. And then after that, I tied in this bad boy I got last week. I'm really liking. So if anyone has any questions about the Mavic 3 Enterprise RTK, I got one. It's really cool. I had a great time flying this.
It goes so fast.
I called you, dude. I was so surprised.
I saw one like a week before that when I went to that construction site, and I was like, "There's no way this thing's mapping at 35 miles an hour." It's just boom, right back. I'm like, what is going on?
It was going so fast. Yeah, like 30 miles an hour, and it's taking pictures like snap, 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 snap. I was very impressed. So
it's mechanical shutter, right?
It's mechanical shutter as well. Yeah, so perfect. The photos were amazing, and I didn't go in an opportune time. I was like at sunset. It was like not a great time, but I'll show you guys the results.
That was at sunset? Oh man, y'all are not gonna believe it was at sunset. I don't believe it either.
Yeah, it was at sunset. Yeah, it was like awesome. I literally was like 30. I was rushing because I just wanted to test something.
Yeah.
But yeah, I got this. I was flying it. This was tied into the ROCK base as well. Yeah. So I had the MLID in the ROCK base tied into the ROCK RTK network, and then I had the Mavic tied in the ROCK RTK network, and I was testing because I was really curious. I was like, I went out with the NGS monument. I said, hey, my MLID is accurate. And then I went and captured a bunch of GCPs on a job site. And then I had those GCPs. And then I had the Mavic 3 tied in. And it was producing an orthomosaic. I didn't use any GCPs in the production of the orthomosaic. That's pretty interesting. I just really want to test how well it works these days. And then I can share my screen. And I'll show you guys what it did. So here is, I went ahead and ordered some planimetrics on it too. So this is the orthomosaic that I got. So you can see all the green plus signs. These are the ground control points I got with the MLID. Let me see if I can turn off the... I'm going to leave them all on for now.
What are you trying to turn on, GCPs?
I was just going to do the GCPs, but basically you can see I went to all the edges of these features. You see the plus signs. I mean, it's all within like a centimeter. It's crazy.
Yeah.
I mean,
it's indistinguishable.
So this was Mavic 3 tied into a ROCK RTK network, the MLID tied in the ROCK RTK network. Then I ran through drone deploy and produced this orthomosaic. And then I used ROCK Cloud to generate all of the line work.
And so what was your turnaround time on the map and the line work? What's the overall workflow like? Yeah,
so this is actually something we're tweaking right now. Daniel and I have been talking about this a bunch, because like the workflow, I think the proper workflow, what it should look like is you go out and fly, you make the orthomosaic using drone deploy, Pix4D, whatever your poison is.
Yeah.
And then our goal is to have the line work back to you, within that week.
Yeah.
That's the goal, because here's an issue. Let me just point out, a known issue here. And this is just common with everything in photogrammetry. So you can see here, we got this, back of curb, top of curb, this gutter line. But then clearly, actually, let me just turn off the features.
Yeah.
There we go. So you can clearly see we got this red curb here. It goes under a tree. Now, in reality, if you're doing, an Alta survey or, what have you, you need to get the curb even if it's under the tree, so it doesn't
You can't just let it stop.
Can't let it stop. So the idea that we're working on is like, and you can do this today, is that you fly, you get your planimetrics, then you highlight spots to go out with an MLID or your other RTK device. You add more data to it, resubmit, and then the rest of the line work is completed for you. So it's kind of this little back and forth. That's really a workflow. Like now you got a guy goes out to the field, they fly, get the orthomosaic, you get the base layer planimetrics, you can load that into your collector, your surveyor, can have it in their collector device, and then they can go and fill in the blanks, and you just pop that data back in, and then we'll finish all that line work.
Yeah, and you can even do it a couple of different ways. Like most survey data collectors can handle a DXF file, which you get from Rock Cloud. You could load it in there and go stake to those points. Or if you just want to go old school, you can stick it in CAD and print it and just walk over there. Both ways work. And then you can go get the rest of the stuff. And then our goal is to finish it out for you.
That was pretty cool, though. I mean, honestly, I'm super impressed with how well the GCPs line up without doing any GCPs in the actual processing. It was just because they're both shot in RTK. So because they're both referenced and accurate.
I think I know this, but like, can you talk about like putting RTK on the Mavic? Like, I know you have the adapter, but what's the actual process? Like, you go on the controller, you have internet, like what do you do?
Yeah, exactly. So I had my hotspot on my phone, controller was connected into my Wi-Fi, and then in the DJI Pilot 2 app, I think that's what's on that one. Basically, you just click on the GPS little icon on the top of the screen, and then in there, I'll pull that really quick, but in there is an in-trip access. So you just enter in the information. So
it's like any other, it's like doing it with the MLID.
Yeah, it's exactly identical to MLID. It's an in-trip caster. So let me stop presenting my screen here.
So if you've got something like the Rock Base, whether you're doing an MLID or an RTK drone, it's all working together.
Yep, exactly. And it's all. So I'm going to enter in the menu here.
I wonder if you've got a Mavic 3 let us know in the comments. We'd love to see some more data sets from it. It looks like an awesome piece of hardware.
I think I might have to have the drone on to do this, but we'll get back to that.
Oh, it's fine. It just sounds like it's not a lot to do that. Pretty simple process.
It's IP address, username, password, mount point, and all that information is given you on the ROCK RTK network. And then so on the network side, guys, some of that's been pretty darn cool. So obviously we launched this product only like a little over a month ago, and I think we've sold 50 of them now. And so there's like 20 installed, and we're just like, people are just still getting out. It's been snowing. People haven't been able to get outside. But I expect, the network is going to grow pretty fast. So for me, I have a couple around me. Basically anywhere I go in South San Francisco is covered. So, but I'm going to do some more range testing and see like, hey, what happens if I go out to 20 kilometers, 30 kilometers, 40 kilometers, and start comparing this data. And I'm really curious about that. I don't see many people out there actually showing real data testing this stuff. So,
yeah. And, some of that stuff also depends on the terrain. So we're going to get, if you're in Western Australia, which I think there's maybe a rock base there already, you're going to get a lot more distance than you do in Denver, as you don't have a mountain range in between you. Look at that.
There you go. So let me see.
Aircraft entered altitude zone.
My bedroom. So I just clicked on the little ... button there at the top. Oh, I'm going.
There you are.
And then you scroll down. Well, you say click the RTK button right there. And then you scroll down that, and you can see I selected this custom RTK network.
Yeah.
And then you can see there's the in-trip host, port, user, password, mount point. And so that's all.
Easy.
That's it. Enter that in, it connected, and boom.
So like even people that don't have a huge background in surveying or anything like that, like it's not a big deal to take your Mavic, get a rock base, and get it RTK accurate within 5 minutes.
No, it's very easy. I'd say the other thing that I was like really just conceptually thinking about is like, because what we're doing with the rock base, like, so we collect data for like almost a week in order to get a very, very precise point for that location. Because we did that, you don't have to worry about doing that on every single job, right?
Right.
Because usually, like, you have to establish, like, really, I mean, yes, people will still do this, but I'm technically speaking, like, we collected data for a week. We ran it through Opus and Arcan for the rest of the world. Like, so It's the same thing you would do. We're just doing it statically for 24 hours and getting a very accurate point, and then everything's based off of that accurate point, right?
Right.
So instead of like always needing to go on site and do that 2 hours, 4 hour Opus solution, well, now you can just use this one because we did it for 24 hours.
Yeah. I mean, you think about multiplying that out, especially I like to think of everything at scale. Like imagine a small scale, even. Like you got 6 people, maybe not even all of them are drone people, but you got a firm whether you're collecting data in one way or the other. If it's 2 hours a day across half of those people, across 3 people, so 6 collective hours a day across your full-time equivalents. I mean, how quick does that add up to like an entire person that you hired is just doing this? Really, when you do the hours, it's like you can either, give yourself that extra manpower without doing anything other than going and hooking something up on the roof. Like it's a game changer.
Yeah, totally. So I mean, the price that we're selling this at, I think it's something there's nothing comes close to the price, of the ROCK base for what it does,
No, I talked to one guy at a university, and his base station was $48,000.
Well, it is $20,000 is a very common price, and then it goes
the
up.
last time I got a quote, it was 17, and I had to buy 2.
Yep, exactly. Now I think that's.
But if anybody wants to pay us $15,999, you can have a ROCK base for that price.
I want people to keep jumping in and joining the the network, because it's one of those things like building this network out is something that helps everyone, helps yourself, and helps everyone. Gives you control. Like you can now control how far your baselines are. So baseline is the distance between the base and rover, the actual distance. So like oftentimes these networks that you would subscribe to, baseline may be way too far for you, and it's just not going to work. It's too far. The separation. Once you go beyond like, well, that's what I'm going to test, but they're saying 50 kilometers now, but 20 kilometers is really as far as you typically feel comfortable with.
Yeah.
But I want to get some real data with these new base stations. So
and even if there's some people, these networks vary across the world, but even if it's free, like you said, if the baseline's 120 kilometers, I talked to someone recently, I think the closest one to them was 100 kilometers.
Don't work. That's too far. Can't do it. Work. Yeah.
And I talked to another one of our R360 users that just got a ROCK base. He was working on an island, and they only had one station, and it turned off, and nobody turned it on for like 3 days. So if you've got a ROCK base in your house, you can make sure it's on before you leave.
Don't go on vacation with this thing off.
Yeah.
Awesome. I think that's our update. Do you got anything else? What else is going on in your life, Daniel?
All kinds of stuff, man. I finally am like halfway not sick, but I do have the planimetrics in AutoCAD if we want to look at it.
Oh yeah. Can you see that? So the planimetrics from ROCK Planimetrics.
So we go. I took it from ROCK Cloud, just like the screen you're on right now, and then I'm in.
How do I share? Can you share your screen? There you go.
Yeah, there's me. So this is in Civil 3D.
So for everyone, what's Civil 3D? Why people use it?
This is the most common surveying and civil engineering version of AutoCAD. There's lots of different versions of AutoCAD. This one is better for building roads and doing survey databases and that kind of thing, and importing drone data. So I imported the image. You can see the background is like I think it's Bing or Google Images in AutoCAD, but this is the image you created. I imported it with just one simple command. I won't run the whole thing again, but map insert, and I just added it right there. And then to open this, it's already a DWG, which is a normal AutoCAD file. So I just opened it. And so all the stuff's already in here, and I could easily block this into my layers or whatever I needed to do. And I can go in and, edit each one if I wanted to. Of course, these are already done, but I can see everything on the ortho or not. I can turn, on and off layers if I want to see what it actually looks like under there, and then turn them back on and make sure everything's lined up. So this is in the normal workflow, what you might see. This is what I was doing before I worked here. I'd bring in these images and, try to reconstruct this myself. And I can just tell you, it's a much better experience to not have to do it yourself. Yeah. This kind of stuff is, you can see like each one of these paint stripes, you think about how real life is. It's not the same as design. So each one of these is a little bit different in length. And so they all take a little while to get done, but it's super easy to use in the software you already have. And I really like that.
You got the top corner. So I was looking around and I saw a little area, top right corner. in the parking lot there. I was like, man, someone screwed up. See those 2 lanes right there?
Yeah.
But actually, there's like a little. It looks like they cut out some of the. They obviously did some work there where they came in and cut that out.
Yeah, you can see the seam right here.
The seam right there. So they probably, did another pipe under the ground or something was there.
You can even, they've even got marker. I mean, they might still be working on it. So that's the thing about, even if you're doing an Alta on a site, let's say sometimes I've got hired to do Altas on Alta surveys on a site that I'd already done an Alta on, and you just call it an Alta update. Well, you can't assume the site's the same. And a drone is a great way to do that. So I preliminarily, of course, I did this on all the surveys, but especially on these, I'd get out there and fly the drone, take the image and put it in my old survey file. And then whatever was different, if I saw it was significant, then I'd be like, oh, I got to get planimetrics.
So. Well, I mean, I think this is a lot of knowledge for people. I think just showing data set, letting people see what things look like. And even in Civil 3D, this is like one of the most common softwares that's used. So, let's, if you have any questions, let us know. Like, we want to answer some of these questions with what knowledge we have. And so feel free just to chat that below and ask it in the comment section, because always more questions makes us all smarter, more smarter. We want to be more smarter most days.
That's a good goal.
So we try.
Aircraft entered altitude zone.
I'm going to turn it off. It's been on for
That's
too long.
Awesome.
So
speaking of flying drones.
Yeah, speaking of flying drones, why don't we bring our guest on and introduce Josh Hallock to the community.
Hey, Josh.
Hey, guys. How are y'all? Thank you for having me.
Josh, we're great today. Thanks for joining the chat today. We got a lot of eager people learning from us and excited to learn from you and hear about your journey. I know you and Daniel have known each other pretty well. And so I think you guys will be able to share some stories with us and with the community. But
only
I think
good ones, Josh. Only good ones. Only good ones.
Only good ones.
Good to preface with that. Thanks for having me. Hopefully, some of the struggles that I've been through, I can help some people through that, through this, and they can reach out later on, and we can help them through the starting out struggles of owning a small business, especially being a drone service provider.
Yeah. So I mean, that sounds super rad and interesting. How did you get it? Like, you want to share with us how you got into this, and why drones? What were you thinking? What led you down this path of making these series of bad mistakes?
Well, starting out, my background is in power distribution design. I used to work for the local EMC here in our area, and I did distribution design. I worked my way up from being on the field crew, building the power lines and working on the power lines, into the design team. And I always wanted to implement drones into the design workflow, because I'm dealing with stuff that's 40, 50, 60, 70 feet in the air, using a pair of binoculars to inspect things, or using a fiberglass extendo stick, with measuring marks on it to measure height above ground level for different things was it was inefficient. And I knew there was a better way. I wasn't sure what that was, but we started getting some jobs where we were looking at joint use projects where other utilities wanted to come in and share the same poles with us. In order to do that, the first step is data acquisition, just like in surveying or earthworks. So we'd go out there, get measurements, note what assemblies were on the pole, all the pertinent information, and then come back and figure out if we had enough room to allow that utility on. Well, when you've got 1,500 of those poles that come in, sending men out there to manually do that is quite the effort. So I started looking into photogrammetry. I stumbled across photogrammetry. I knew there was a way to measure from images, just from equipment that I had seen in our industry. So I knew there was a way to measure from images, but I didn't know how to go about it. So I ended up with some really archaic photogrammetric software, and I was using my iPhone to do that. And I knew there's got to be a better way. So I came across drones. I came across Pix4D. I ran into LiDAR, and I knew LiDAR is way out of my price range at the time, until I found you guys. And then...
Well, that was probably even before ROCK existed when you were starting, Josh.
Yeah. I think Rock was just starting out. I was watching. I came on to LiDAR through the Indiana Drones channel. And
Hell yeah!
Do you know who that's him?
That guy looks familiar.
Yeah.
But
That's
I
awesome.
remember Harrison flying. Was it like an M800 or something like that with a
Yep.
Regal on it? And I was like, well, that's way out of my price range. And then here comes the L1.
Yep.
And I didn't really understand a whole lot about that, but I kept watching the videos. And then the R2A, I found that. So it's just kind of evolved. I went from using photogrammetry to make orthomosaic maps and 3D models of these structures. Anybody that's done 3D photogrammetry, it's time consuming and it's not easy to get a good result out of it. So
nope.
The obvious thing was skip the photos, create the point cloud directly, and LiDAR would give that. So that was what led me into the drone service provider role. But rewinding a little bit, I stumbled across drones, orthomosaics, the construction industry. I was already heavily involved in the construction industry, doing the design work and field coordination with contract companies, site development companies.
Yeah.
So it was natural for me to just start going in and saying, hey, look at this, look what we can do to help you save money, to help you track progress, catch errors before they become a big issue, through mapping and through images and videos. Well, then naturally, I'm never satisfied with just doing the bare minimum or just doing the simple things. So I wanted to get into the more technical side of it, the background in engineering. So the next thing was earthworks. The end goal for me was always to work with surveying firms and engineering firms. So I got into doing earthworks management and analysis with grading companies. And I was doing that with photogrammetry. So once everything was stripped and we had bare earth, and I'd go out and set 400 million control points, GCPs, and sweat to death. And I started running into some of the difficulties with photogrammetry, with lighting. As far as accuracy goes, with focal length and shutter speed and yada, yada, yada. So I wanted to get away from that, and I already knew about the R2A, so I was ready to switch to that platform. And I got linked up with Daniel, and he gave his testimony of how it changed his workflow. And
before I even worked there. See, free
advertising. That's right.
Yeah, I think it's really awesome. Like, one of the things I'm picking up on that's really cool about your story, Josh, is that it sounds like you come from this position of doing a task that needed to be done independent of the technology, right? Like, this was, whether it was these poles and looking at attachment points, like, this was just it needed to be done. It was a line item contained in a business already being paid for to be done. And then now, so you're coming at it from that perspective, like, I have a problem, and now here's a tool that does it better. And like, just that whole mindset of like working through like running a small business or just running a business, any business, is like, I think that's like a key takeaway for people listening, is like, really look at the problems, understand like there's tools out there. Like, of course, we love the LiDARs, we love the drones, like, these are cool toys. They're really fun. But
they're great tools.
But to come at it from a problem space and then solve a problem with a better tool. So I think that's really cool hearing you say that, and like hearing that part of your journey. And then now that you've kind of have a foothold into that, now you're expanding, you're learning more problems, and you're like, hey, this is a tool that works with that problem too.
Yeah.
I think that's very different than most people.
That's kind of how my brain works. And probably a lot of people that fell into this space, is, we're looking for efficient solutions to just dynamic problems on construction sites or whatever the industry you may be in. And efficiency, doing things manually, one person in the field running a stick up to measure an attachment height, and then you got to get out in the middle of a busy highway, run the stick up.
It's safety at that point.
Right. And then, doing the 3D modeling was the next iteration. That gave me good measurement data, but then that was very hard to pick up on small wires, using photogrammetry. So LiDAR does so much better of a job of that. And but yeah, continuing to find solutions to companies' problems that they're having. Daniel talked about this on other podcasts, that a lot of companies are having manpower issues today. Every company, I think. So being able to offer solutions for that is really cool.
Yeah. You even put solution in the name.
Yeah, that was strategic,
Yeah.
We wanted logical solutions from the air. So
yeah,
I think that's all. Can you talk a little bit more about, like, I want to hear your experience. I know my experience with trying to do like 3D assets, like a pole with photogrammetry. I know there's a lot of like videos and there's some beautiful data sets too. Like, don't get me wrong. I've seen some some towers that look freaking phenomenal. But every time I've tried doing it, it's been a quite different story.
Yeah.
Like, I'm very impressed with the Rembrandts of the world that have done really good. But then whenever I do it, I just don't seem to. How's your experience been with doing that?
Well, that was my exact experience when I started out. I was looking at beautiful data sets on Pix4D's website, and people that would post on Sketchfab, and I'm looking at these solid models that just looked phenomenal, and I was like, well, that's the end all be all. I mean, I can see tiny wires. I had no idea what it took to get there, so I started out doing just nadir maps, a crosshatch pattern map, and I was like, wow, this is garbage. It looks great from the top down, but from the facade or any other angle, it was not great. So then I started learning about oblique imagery, mixing in that crosshatch nadir map with an orbit and an oblique imagery, and then doing some vertical facade shooting up and down. But really what I've come to find is all that's great. As far as photogrammetry goes, lighting is king. If you have good cloudy days, which that is really hard to nail down, that's going to be
usually raining when it's cloudy.
Exactly. And if you want the most accurate data for survey deliverables and you're using photogrammetry, those overcast days, nice, calm, not a whole lot of wind, that's going to get a good deliverable, but that is very few and far between. So when creating models,
right?
Right. Yeah. LiDAR just took care of that. But to create those models, you had a tremendous amount of point cloud editing, especially when you had something like a cell phone tower or a power pole with a lot of different assets coming off of it. You'd get your point cloud, it would be noisy, and then you got to go in and trim everything up before you can mesh it and texture it and turn it into a solid model. It's very labor intensive. And when you're talking about 1,000 poles and doing that for 1,000 poles,
might as well go out there and walk it.
Yeah, exactly. By the time you process all the data, you could have sticked everything. But then enter LiDAR, where it's projecting perfect measurements everywhere along the way, 240,000 shots a second, or a little more. That took out a lot of that painstaking process. It was fly, get a scan, bring it in, and let's get to work.
Were your clients happier with that tighter turnaround time?
Oh yeah, because a lot of the construction sites, that I'm working on now doing earthworks analysis, they need a quick turnaround time. They're looking everything from initial topo once everything's stripped, or even before things are stripped off the land, working for these surveyors. They're looking for that initial value. And then like Bill from Earth Tech, I got into building models. I had a little bit of history of that before, but if I can get the model built, go out and fly, throw it into Rock Cloud, order my deliverable, and then compare, cut, fill, or measure my stockpiles and get them. A lot of times I can get it back to them within 24 hours.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
That's key. So people love that.
That's crushing it.
It is. It is incredible. I mean, I understand you came from a little bit of a photogrammetry background with some large fixed wing stuff from what
that was months,
and the processing is very arduous.
Yeah, it's the processing, and really it came down to like this was like such a common feeling for me, is like I would go out and do, acquire data, and then it was always like this. I hope it's all gonna stitch. I hope it's all gonna be fine.
You
I'm
don't
like
know.
90% sure it should be good.
Yeah.
And then I would come back because at some of the larger areas you get very monotonous terrain where it's like very similar, and then the dreaded red dots on Pix4D, whenever like a photo, there's no tie points in that photo, so it's omitted.
Yep.
So it was
And then
always
you got your manual tie points.
then you do manual tie points as best as you can, and it was just one of those things. Like once I started, like my first time doing LiDAR, I was like, wait a minute, are you saying like if it's recording data, it's all gonna work? And then like if it's on, it's going to work. And like that whole removing, because I did so much rework, when I was doing photogrammetry, of course photogrammetry works great. Like the example we showed earlier, like it's like an ideal scenario for it. But when you're doing like anything with like trees, farm fields, anything this kind of the terrain looks the same, or like there's movement because like the trees are moving.
Right.
Like this all will screw with it a little bit. And then you mentioned something that actually I had a conversation with one of the co-founders of Drone Deploy, and one question that I wanted to do a study on the stockpile. I wanted to like start at like sunrise at like 11 a.m., 2 p.m., 5 p.m., and then like sunset and like one shits and giggles at nighttime. And then just do the same photogrammetry mission and do the same LiDAR mission 6 times throughout a day, and just see what changes in the volume for the stockpile on photogrammetry and LiDAR. Because presumably LiDAR should be fine. It'll be the same every time.
Yeah.
But then photogrammetry, like, if there's huge shadows and like big dark spots, like what is that going to do to the volume? And I talked to the co-founder of Drone Deploy, and this is just a year ago, something like this, and they didn't know. I was like, and there's no fault on them. Like, I'm not saying they need to know everything. But it was one of those things, like logically it should change stuff. But
there's nothing out there that says this is the time you should do a stockpile. I mean, I usually do like a 10 to 2 type of thing in the winter, and maybe 9 to 3 in the summer here in the South, but you don't know.
Well, on these larger jobs, like the big city mapping stuff, they're very stringent on what hours of the day you can do it on.
Right.
Because they don't want the shadows all to align.
Right.
Like if you look at Google Maps, you'll notice like you don't see a bunch of long shadows and short shadows. Like you don't see that. You'll see everything looks almost consistent. And you're like, how the hell did they do that?
Yeah, I mean, every time you run something through photogrammetric, processing software, I don't know that it's going to pick the same key points twice. So if you have 2 different data sets, it's going to find different key points, which is going to change your projection overall, your model. But and then if you don't have good, like well exposed imagery, that I was watching your Mavic 3 Enterprise segment in the beginning, and the dynamic range on that camera is phenomenal. It's well exposed, but if you don't have that, that's going to throw off your sparse cloud generation, your dense cloud generation. And I've had the same job. I've had to go back and fly 4 times to try to just to weed out any errors in photogrammetry, and I don't do that anymore with LiDAR. So
huzzah.
Josh, can you talk about some jobs, or you have a job in mind that you want to talk about that you've been doing lately?
Yeah. So we've had a couple. It's been a busy first quarter. 2 standout jobs. We've always got the cut fill jobs going. I partnered with a couple of local surveyors, and they get me to do all their topos, because everybody knows 1-man LiDAR versus even a 4-man ground crew. We're going to win every time with point density. And I think the last one I did was over 500 acres of LiDAR. After I ran it through ROCK Surveyor, I want to say it had over 100 points per square foot. It was like 119 or something points per square foot. So you'll never get that level of detail. But a cool job that we've had recently, we mapped a very large plat of land, very large for me. It was about 450 acres all in all. And it was kind of a different use case. the guy who bought the land, it was previously owned by somebody from the New Jersey Mafia back in the early 2000s or late 90s. I mean, there was
The Sopranos in real life.
It was. I mean, there was a house that didn't get finished because the guy passed away or something, but the house's exterior walls were 9-inch thick, 5/8 inch thick rebar, reinforced concrete walls, all the exterior walls. It had an underground tunnel system. So I got a call from the surveyor saying, hey, we want to get this topoed. He wants to see, we're looking for undulations in the Earth's surface, because supposedly there was 30 semi-truck loads of 8-foot in diameter corrugated plastic pipe that were delivered to the site years ago, and nobody ever has it. And they have no idea what happened to them. So they're thinking there is a underground tunnel network that spans this, roughly 300 acres, which I would believe it, because there was several ponds on the property that were fenced in, one of which had I think it was a 12-foot long alligator inside of it that they shot and killed. I mean, this is right here in Northeast Georgia.
Yeah. Really? What?
So they had a picture of the alligator strung up on a John Deere tractor, and it was so long that they couldn't get the alligator all the way off the ground with the tractor going all the way up. So there was some weird stuff going on there. But we went out, flew that. I think the whole entire thing, flight time, putting out some extra GCPs, setting our control, the whole thing was done in one day, and
awesome.
Had it processed in about 40 minutes on my laptop in the field. Mm-hmm. So I knew that everything was good before we even left the site, which is awesome. I love PC Master, and now Rock Desktop I was so excited. I sent Daniel a screenshot of my computer when you sent out the Rock Desktop email. I was so excited. But so we got all that done and got
more
back.
from Rock Desktop coming too.
Yeah,
stay tuned.
I cannot wait. It's I love LiDAR data. I like that more than flying the drones, processing the data. So having more tools to do that with is super exciting. But
that's awesome.
We had got everything processed, uploaded to Rock Cloud, took a look at it, made any small changes, XYZ, which it didn't need anything really, and then ordered our deliverable, and I ordered some brake lines.
Mm-hmm.
Because there was a lot of stone walls and head walls for where these ponds drained into each other, which they did a phenomenal job. Your team does a great job on that. And we had it back in 3 days. The whole thing is 450 acres with brake lines, full topo.
Sweet.
So what we ended up using, or initially what our surveyor wanted, was contours. They were looking for abnormalities in the contours.
Yeah.
Of the property. Well, we ended up, the contours were obviously phenomenal. They were 1-foot contours on over 400 acres. Looked unreal, but then the shining deliverable in this scenario was the digital elevation model, the solid model.
Yeah.
From the ground classified points was unbelievable. I mean, you look at the data set, and we saw every ravine, every creek bed. We found a lot of really suspicious areas, random holes that were 15 feet in diameter for no reason out in the middle of the woods. And
so that's your to-do list right there.
That's my to-do list. Any stockpiles of Tommy guns, or
not that he's going to tell us.
We're getting there. We ain't got there yet. So from my understanding, the next iteration is to take those areas, those points of interest from the LiDAR data, and then go out and do like a field run on them with some GPR equipment and metal detectors, and they're going to dig around and see what they can find.
You're going full Curse of Oak Island here.
I know. I'm so excited too. So
any TV producers out there, Josh needs a show.
Yeah. Yeah. No.
Yeah. They the property is owned by a really famous musician, and his producer wanted to make a show on History Channel about the whole thing, but I don't think they ever pulled the trigger on it. But it would have been amazing. I mean, there was some
we can do an episode Indiana drones.
That's
Yeah.
what I think too.
It's a short drive for me.
There's a definitely a YouTube channel that is definitely down.
We're ready.
Well, Josh, that sounds
speaking-
really cool, man. Sounds like you've been crushing it, and using these tools with your past experience, kind of the perfect mix of creating a successful business venture for you.
Yeah, it's been awesome.
What about, before we're going to go to Q&A here in a second, but I just had a couple of questions. Like, what would you warn against? Like, what is something that, like, in your journey, just as in drones, doesn't have to be LiDAR specific, that you've done and you wish you can pass on to other people, say, don't do that? It's maybe a tough question.
It's a laundry list, I think, but it depends on where you're going to get into the field. If you're going to go into the survey side or you need really accurate data, make sure you understand if you're using LiDAR in the way that ROCK Robotic has put together the workflow, it's almost foolproof, but make sure you understand, how to properly use GPS, make sure that all of your statistics and everything is good before you take your measurements, ground control point distribution, know what it takes before you send the drone up to get a good deliverable in the end. And as far as LiDAR goes, practice your figure eights. Make sure they're perfect. If you got a good figure eights, then you'll have no worries at all.
There might be some tools coming into the near future that would obsolete that need.
Oh,
I will neither confirm nor deny.
Cannot wait.
No, that's awesome. Yeah, I think getting that I agree, the base knowledge of the tools that you're using, and then knowing how to do it, you want to get something, knowing how to properly do it, before you start.
You always want to know where you're going to get there.
Yeah, when I trained these, I used to train people on these big fixed wing drones, and I don't feel this way with like the Mavics or the M300s, but I used to say, I don't really say it too much anymore because I don't feel like I need to, but with the big ones, I would say, like, listen, 99% of your success happens before you take off, but once you're in the air, gravity still works.
Yeah.
If you screwed something up, it will come down.
Yeah.
9.8 meters per second squared. It'll never fail you.
It is something we can rely on in this world. One of the few things.
Yeah, I would, to expand on that, just make sure, to anybody who's starting out with a new company that wants to go out and advertise, practice a lot. It doesn't cost anything to go out to an empty field on a Saturday and practice and make sure that your data is coming in good. Make sure that get familiar with, your settings for everything. And if you're looking to provide orthos with your LiDAR, make sure that you understand the overlap and the speed and lighting. And
totally.
Just don't overpromise and underdeliver. Make sure you practice a lot, because I spent many late nights trying to connect the dots at last minute. So
we're actually, more secrets coming to fruition here. And some of the things we're talking about doing is for like the Rock Cloud, we're going to change the plans around a little bit, such that you have like included deliverables for up to a certain amount per month.
Nice.
So because that's one of the things, like, I personally want to like encourage people to test, experiment, to use, because I know how important that's, like, super important to be able to like feel confident in my abilities to go out and do this. So that's one piece of it. But then the other piece is just like, then it incentivizes you to go out and just use the tool. One of the things that Daniel's been saying a lot is, just fly every job. And why not? Like, if we reduce those barriers such that now it's kind of like all included, up into some amount. But if we did that, then there's no extra real cost, and batteries charge and discharge. So
that's.
And the way you usually figure out if you can do something is you go try a small version of it. That's why when I'm teaching people to do this in onboarding with LiDAR, or even if you're doing photogrammetry, like, okay, well, before you can do 500 acres, go do 5 in the same way and see if it works. If it
Yeah.
doesn't work on the 5, it ain't going to work on the 500. So
Exactly.
it just kind of reduces that friction. But I think we got a lot of questions, guys.
You got a lot of questions? Let's
Yeah.
go to questions. Question and answer time. All right, so we got our first question here. So question, would an RTK station have the same results as the GCPs with a 3M? Mavic 3. Mavic 3.
Using RTK instead of any GCPs?
Is that what the question says?
I don't know. I think so.
Okay. So
yeah.
Okay. Yes.
Yes.
I would still say use GCPs always. That's always going to be, but you would get those GCPs from the RTK. So really the GCP is just helping that photogrammetric algorithm tie everything in. And so you can think of it as like a rubber sheet almost, like what photogrammetry is going to do. So you can pin a few points on that rubber sheet that are accurate, but then between those 2 pin points, the sheet can distort in between the two. And typically, that's how you would see a distortion happen. So it'd be pinned on those 2 points, but then in between it can go off a little bit, but then come back. So you always kind of want to have those points pinned. What I was showing earlier was like, and here's the other thing: is I was showing earlier was a photogrammetry job that I did, and then I had GCPs on it. So really, I should have done the GCPs in the processing because I had them.
Yeah, it's proof of concept. It shows the accuracy.
Yeah, I was. This is more of an exercise in curiosity, but if you got them,
use them.
And use them. No reason not to. So,
absolutely.
That might have answered the question.
Yeah.
Question number 2: can I mount a rock base at my house when the work site is 20 miles away? You sure can.
Yeah.
Yep, and that was some of the things I'm talking about. Testing the accuracy. So typically, right now, the general rule of thumb now for like triple band, L1, L2, L5, all constellation receivers sending out corrections over RTK is like 50 kilometers. Yeah. And so this has been said by people that have 3-letter acronyms behind their names. And to me, I don't trust any of that. So that's why I'm going to go out and test it. And because everyone says these things, but who the heck who's tested it?
Everybody's got a different answer too. So.
And they're all different because they all had a bad experience at one point 20 years ago. And, certainly nothing changes in 20 years. It's amazing how much has changed.
In the future, are you going to be able to get static raw data downloads from the rock bases?
There may or may not be the first version of that coming out in Rock Desktop that you would. Wow. Yeah, you see what I'm saying? Basically, you'd go out and fly, and it would just automatically tie in, and Rock Desktop will take care of it. We'll grab the data, bring it down, process the data, and that's one of the things we're looking at potentially, allegedly.
Hey, if you could figure out a way, if you could make a way to for the Mavic 3 has become so popular, post-process the data using the rock bases, because now all our photogrammetry is PPK processed, and people talking about RTK and will it be as accurate, your GCPs and everything. And you alluded to it in your early videos that PPK is king. Especially with drones flying through the air. So that's
I love that idea. If I have actually thought of that one, maybe or maybe not, allegedly, that might be. It could be possibly exactly what we're doing.
There's a few things in the pipeline that are coming. It sounds like.
It's just using that data, and because to me, I think having exactly what you're saying. So having a solution where no matter if you never even bought a base station for your Mavic 3, your Mavic 3 Enterprise, but you have the data on the rover, on the drone, that it's always PPK accurate. Mm-hmm. That's certainly along the lines of what we're doing. So
it's the way to go. That is the way to go.
So this one's for you, Josh. How'd you market yourself to get work? And was it previous contacts and networking that got you started? And then how do you do it now?
It was a mix. I mean, I had a couple of previous contacts because through the distribution design on the power side, I met a lot of superintendents and contract companies that I worked with. So I started with them, but we weren't close with each other. So it was more or less just advertising my service at the beginning of a new project. So it was a mix of calling on people that I already knew. And honestly, I think none of those hit, as a matter of fact. So the way that I got all of my first business was just going through and finding new job sites with a construction trailer set up and go in, give them a business card, talk about what I could do, how I could help them, problems that can be solved. If you see a stockpile of dirt or a lot of dirt being moved and there's a construction trailer or there's a guy sitting in a pickup, stop and talk to them, because it's invaluable.
I love that, man. That's exactly how I do things too. You're spot on.
That's how you get your work. Is I did cold calling, a lot of cold calling. I didn't get one job off cold calling. But when you go shake somebody's hand, give them a business card, it comes back to make sure you know what you're doing, or at least sound like you do, and then make sure you give a good product in the end, because they'll be able to sniff it out if you don't. Stuff together.
And Josh, it sounds like we got actually several questions for you. You want to do like a lightning round?
Sure. I'll do my best.
You got like a boom, 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 lightning round.
Boom! Oh, my voice is gone. I try to do a sound effect.
All right, let's sure, lightning round it is, guys. What advice could you give to someone starting out and wants to have a drone service business one day?
Figure out what deliverables you want to provide. What are you interested in? What are you passionate about? Get a drone, start practicing, get a lot of samples, just get lots of data sets that you can share with people, and then just start slow. Try to let your business grow organically, because that's my philosophy.
Love it. So key point there is choose the deliverable that you want to do.
Yep.
Don't look for a drone first.
Nope.
Look for the deliverable.
Buy the wrong one. Almost guaranteed.
And you're in such a good spot now with the Mavic 3. It does everything, so you can't really go wrong there.
Who are your competitors as a DSP? Surveyors, customers who self-perform, other DSPs?
Competitors for me, I guess, would be other drone service providers, but I don't look at them as competitors, because a lot of them, at least in my area, 99% of them, they don't have LiDAR, or they may not know 3D modeling for conceptual grading models. So they're not really competitors. But if I had to say, it would be a drone service provider. Our surveyors, they're our partners, they're our friends. They are the ones that I work for. So they're definitely not competitors. They're friends.
Totally agree. I think there's not enough people out there yet to really have like competitors are like stealing, food from your plate.
No. It's getting very popular, but it's not there. Most of the drone service providers that I run into and people that I know, they offer photo, video, and drone deploy maps. So if you can really find that niche deliverable that you want to give and get really good at it, you'll grow like crazy.
Yeah, I think for me, like it comes down like something you said earlier, but I totally agree with, is like, the GPS. The data that we're working with here, we're working with GPSs, we're working with RTK, we're working with the LiDAR. It's all those fine points of the technology, like on the geospatial side. I think if you spend your time to learn that stuff and learn the deliverables that it produce, you're gonna have work for the rest of your life, because and that's the hard part. And if you can learn that, then instantly when you walk into a room, you're smart. You know what you're talking about. Like, I think it's hard, and I think that's part of I'm making a lot more videos about like how to learn that stuff right now. So I want more people to be experts on those details and not just be like, look, pretty map.
Yeah.
I tell people in onboarding, 80% of this is coordinate systems. Like flying the drone is just like what you take a cool video of and post online. Like the rest of it is understanding projections, and that the Earth's round, guys. We have to go from round to flat. There's some math involved.
Yeah. Maps are flat. Earth is round. For someone being a complete noob and not having any background in engineering or construction, how difficult is it to understand and be successful in this industry?
I don't think it's very difficult. Be honest with yourself. If you have the personality type, if you're a problem solver, you're always looking to solve a problem, no matter what project you're working on, then you'll probably pick up the more intricate details, like we're talking about with the equipment, the workflow, the processing, to getting that end deliverable. If you're more on the creative side, you might be better suited for photo and video type stuff. But be honest with yourself. What are you passionate about? What do you like doing? I don't think it's hard to pick up. There's so much information on the internet now. You're just going to have to practice, because you're going to run into more problems than you ever anticipate. Except with the rock stuff. It just works so flawlessly that there's really not any problems.
Write that man a check.
We did not. I was going to say, we did not pay this man to say that.
Remember, people, I went from a Phantom to a R2A. So
is that real? Phantom to R2A. That's awesome.
Yeah.
What is an efficient way of turning customer interest into paid contracts? Also, what is your policy on demos? I like to say what our policy on demos are, but
efficient way of turning customer interest into paid contracts.
How do you seal the deal, Josh?
A lot of times it is with demos. I have no problem getting a demo data set put together for somebody doing their first flight for free. I want them to know the benefit of hiring me and using the service, and what this type of equipment can do to help them save money, save time, keep up with their job site better. So demos a lot of the time. And then to seal the deal, it comes back to make sure that you've got your deliverable down packed. Make sure you know what you're doing. So when you give it to them, it's a mind-blowing deliverable. Again, with LiDAR, it's not hard because everybody loves to see 3D point clouds. So pretty cool.
Yeah. You send them a link, the share link from the Rock Cloud, and they can open the data set themselves and see it.
Put it on RGB view, because that looks so cool too.
Oh yeah. Yep. Yeah. Definitely. All right. We have lost bids to fixed wings despite the density being much lower. Is that a common thing?
No, I haven't run across that. I don't think I've run across that at all, actually, because a lot of the surveyors that I've worked with, they call it like canned topo, where they were getting it off an airplane, and it may not be the most recent thing. So when you're able to provide 1 foot contours as opposed to 2s and 10s, or 5 foot contours, there's not really much of a comparison. Yeah. And if the end deliverable is a point cloud, there is no comparison, because if you can fly at 10 miles an hour, at 200 feet or 150 feet in the air, your point cloud's going to be crispy.
This is something, I wanted to do. Actually, that's another video I want to do, is just like do an airplane LiDAR versus a drone LiDAR. So I may be asking someone to hire an airplane LiDAR and get a data set, so then we can go fly it, post, and just do a
cool.
Apple. That'd be really, like, my honest feeling here is that the drone LiDAR is going to be better. Even though the airplane stuff costs $750,000 to buy the camera, I actually don't think that price is going to get you a better data set at the end. That's my I've seen lots of data sets, but it's also my intuition is like, that's the question I would love to do in back, side to side comparison.
Especially if you're looking at the R360 and the density you get, the rate of return and the scan rate on that. It's going to be hard. You're going to have $1 million unit on an airplane to get anywhere close. So,
Josh, you got $1 million? No, you got an R2A.
Not that I know of.
We haven't found it yet.
Maybe next year.
Maybe next year.
That's profit, guys. I'm talking about million profit. We're not talking about this man can make $1 million revenue. No problem.
I'm net $1 million.
See, we got any more questions?
Yeah.
We
got a big one. This is one of 3. Okay. All right, this is gonna be fast. Josh, as you got started, you obviously had to make decisions to cut hours at your then full-time to make time to grow your drone business. Eventually, you had to completely leave your full-time job and focus on your startup. What were some of the lessons learned during that decision process and advice you have to someone in a similar circumstance that has a good full-time job but wants to start a business as a DSP? So yeah, how'd you transition? Did you pull the Band-Aid? Did you make sure you had money first? And
early mornings and late nights, I started saving some money I would not quit your full-time job to go out on something new unless you have just no responsibilities and obligations. But for somebody with a family and kids, or bills to pay, start setting money aside to buy the equipment and get what you need. Don't get some crazy, outlandish, purchases that are not going to give you any benefit. I started out with a Phantom 4 Pro V2. I did everything with that. I did photos, videos, mapping, everything. But I saved up using my full-time job, and mornings and nights, those are your friends. So work it early in the morning before your job, work in the evening after your job. If you take lunch breaks and go fly your drone around and play, get the experience. And then I started building up while I was still working full time. I started building up a client base and getting some work, and it eventually got to a tipping point where, hey, I can't keep everything up. So this business is really important. So it's time to shift and go all in. And that's actually when I bought the R2A, and I went all in, and it has paid off, and we've been very blessed.
That's awesome. That's awesome. I totally agree with that. Just, you got 16 hours in a day. I mean, yes, I like to reserve 8 for sleeping.
Me too. Me too.
But it's not a forever thing. You don't have to do 16 hours for your whole life. It's just, in order to get something going, you got to put in the double time. You got to do it. It's just, but that work ethic will set you apart and that's what's going to make you successful,
Be smart about how you spend your time too. Know what you want to practice when you're off work. Make sure when you put the drone up that you're going to be working on getting a deliverable that you can use in your portfolio to share with potential clients. You got to have something concrete. They don't want to just hear about what you can do. They'd like to see what you're actually doing. So be efficient with your time. It'll happen faster than you think. That's for sure.
It always does, right? I think it's the whole first step fear, right? It's that the first step always looks like a mountain, but then once you do that first step, then the second step and the third step, pretty soon you're just walking on an inclined plane and there's no steps. You're just moving, but you look back and you're like, damn, look how far we've come. I think there's a lot of truth to that. And this is the psychology of, because ROCK is my second startup, bigger adventure that we've done. But before that, I ran I had a house cleaning business in college, and I actually cleaned a bunch of professors, their houses and I was literally cleaning I was doing research in the lab, and at night I would go and clean their toilets. And that's legit what I was doing. And that's how I hustled to.
You were working. That's what mattered.
Yeah. But I think it was the mindset of I'm putting it in and not even, no excuses kind of thing. I think the excuse is oh, my friends are going out, I want to go do this, or, go to the bar, or, whatever it is, or, all these things those things are fun, but I think there's nothing more satisfying than creating something in this world. And next thing it's paying you dollars.
Yep.
And it's something you made, and holy shit, what? So
I think one of the most important things on that is when you do start making money, just turn around and easily go back into your business. That is, I think that's paramount, because if you take your money and then you're going out and eating, filet mignon and lobster on that money, turn it around and put it back into your equipment, or put it into training, or whatever you can, because you're going to need that in the long haul. So when the big job comes up, or the big client calls, or you get the big break, you're ready for it.
Yeah, totally agree. And I think that's, before I get to this next question, I totally agree with that. And like, it changes the mindset of why at some point in your life, you kind of like, maybe when you're younger, like you just want to get rich or something, right? You want to have that money. You want to go do those fun things. But then at some point you realize like the thing that I really loved and brought me the most happiness was this, this endeavor, this journey of this business. And like, so putting money back in that, you're actually like, I think you'll find more satisfaction in life long-term doing that than going for the short, quick thrills of like whatever you're going to splurge that money on. You're going to buy the Lamborghini or whatever once you get like really rich. Everything I've heard from people that have a lot of money, like I got a friend who just bought a brand new Bentley the other day. He had the electric Porsche, the all-wheel drive one. It's a $260,000 car. He got it. Yeah, the Taycan. He has a Taycan, and then he didn't like charging it all the time. And so he went out and bought this brand new $260,000 Bentley. But honestly, he was excited to get the car. A week later, it sat in the garage. He didn't even care about it. Like those joys don't last that long.
Don't chase the dopamine.
No, it's never good enough.
Yeah, and that comes back to, I think, another important point to nail home is be honest with yourself. What have you found yourself doing in the past? For me, I was always trying to find efficient solutions to very time-consuming problems or workflows. I wanted a more efficient, faster way to do it. So I kind of naturally fell into this. Be honest with yourself. If you're really good with creative stuff, you may fall into the video stuff and you'll have a passion for it, but don't put a square peg in a round hole, and just be honest with yourself, and then get out there and work your butt off. Because the checks and the money are cool, it pays the bills and it's how I support my family. But I love seeing the data show up on my computer. The drone flying is cool, but it's not like I'm FPV flying through tunnels. I'm flying lawnmower patterns with LiDAR, which is awesome. And everybody and their brother has to stop and see what it is. But when I see the data come up on the computer, I have nerded out with Daniel several times over some awesome looking data. We recently flew a big hospital development, several $1 million budget on this thing. It's going to be a 16-story hospital tower addition. The thing's got cranes on the site. We got 2 cranes, a bunch of small cranes on it. I mean, I had to fly my M300 in between a 200-foot crane and a 400-foot crane, in between the booms and right past the vertical mast, and it was terrifying. So the drone flying part wasn't fun, but when I looked at the data and saw just every little detail, I was like, yep, that's why I do this. I about had a heart attack while flying, but the data made it all work.
Yeah, we've all been there.
It was so cool.
What is the likely financial obligation to get set up with the correct equipment and training to get a setup like Josh is doing? What equipment is recommended? Any advice on training programs? Hey, Daniel does training.
Hey, yeah. By the way, it's me.
And for training,
So,
he has solved a lot of my problems.
Yeah. If you get any Rock hardware, it comes with the training you need to succeed. All the way into, you may end up having to be my friend. That's a trick Josh into it. But.
Yeah, that's on the ROCK side. So I know Josh, the Phantom 4 starting out, but the Mavic 3 Enterprise is like the new Phantom 4 today.
Yeah,
it's like photogrammetry. That thing is sick.
Go with that. If you're going to go on the photogrammetry side, LiDAR, you just can't go wrong with the M300, the R2A, the package. Shout out to David Song. He was, we were in contact before I knew Daniel. I reached out to ROCK, and then David blew me up for, the better part of a year and a half. I would get like a bi-weekly, phone call from him and an email, and Finally, he helped me customize my package to my budget because I'm a small business, and the financial obligation wasn't bad, and got me exactly what I needed. So from sales to training through Daniel, through the support team, they got you covered A to Z. It's pretty streamlined.
I'm gonna tell David you said that because he's been crushing it still continuously. Like he's just his personality type. He knows a lot about this technology. Like he is like a complete nerd, and he loves LiDAR. Like I think this is like what he was born to do.
He used to call me and we'd be on the phone for like no less than 45 minutes. And he was just trying to sell me on LiDAR, but we would end up talking about Harrison and his 6-foot fixed wing stuff that you used to fly, and just nerd out on it. And then at the end of it, it's like, well, I'm going to call you when I get the money. And, then he'd call me back and we'd nerd out again. So he's super.
But you did call when you got the money.
I did. I called as soon as I got the money, and he fixed me up, and it was, it's just been sunshine and rainbows ever since.
Amen. That's great. No, I think that's something that's big difference. So for anyone, like this is a shameless plug for Rock. I appreciate what you're saying, but one big difference, like we really try like working with the customer at the customer level, trying to get you successful with this technology, right? So this all comes back to like a fundamental decision, like in the why behind ROCK Robotics. Like one of the things that we changed the business model, right? So if you look at anyone else in the marketplace, they're trying to sell you a widget, and when you buy that widget, they gone, and that was my experience before this as well. But with us offering the ROCK Cloud, us trying, offering more advanced deliverables, we're really like as a business, we're incentivized that you're successful. So
it's a relationship.
You buy the hardware. Like if you're not flying and you're not getting jobs, well, that's not good for us either. So that's why now we have, I think we have 5 people full-time on support now, and we're training. We do the videos. That's why we're doing this. It's like, for us to be successful, we kind of need you to be successful. So to me, it's like, this is kind of a fundamental thing just for business in general, is incentives. And so I think earlier we had a question about like competition, and it's saying as a surveyor that your competition. Well, it depends on the incentive structure. Like if the surveyor is a company that they're never going to learn how to fly drones, like they're not incentivized, they're not aviation people. Like they will never do that. They have no incentive to do that. But then you come in and offer the service that's getting what they need faster, and they're very incentivized to do that. So then you have an alignment between 2 companies that symbiotically work together and grow. If the incentive is, different. So if David only made money when we sold hardware, David would only care to call you up just to get you to give us that check. And then, and this has been experience I've had in the past, as soon as you get that check in, it's like, thank you, bye-bye. Our job, we did our job. We sold the hardware. Now you have hardware and we gone, and that's, to me, it's like, it's incentives and business model. And there's a lot to go on with like how you architect, how you do business. And if you set up the incentive structure correctly, such that your customers and you are both incentivized by the same thing, that's when you get like great growth. And that's been what ROCK has experienced. And it's such a small little thing, but it's had huge implications on our growth as a company. And, sounds like your experience with this hardware, and then just every decision we make is based off of that core business model decision that we made before we started ROCK. When we were thinking about this, like, what could we do to make this such in a way that it would keep growing on its own, with this one idea being this foundational block? And it was that incentive structure change that's made us so different in the marketplace, and thus all these things come out of it. So anyway, that's a shameless plug.
It shows. I mean, from the hardware, there's phenomenal hardware out there. There's people who make great hardware, but the way that you guys have packaged it together is what drew me to it, because when you're initially looking at LiDAR, you don't get a lot of LiDAR systems. You're getting more of them now, but you don't get a lot of systems with a scanner and RGB camera, your IMU, and it's in a small package and it all works really well together. So you built that really well. But then even more important than that, LiDAR, I had a meeting with a company the other day and they said, LiDAR is I like to call it dumb data. It's just a bunch of points with the X, Y, and Z. It's just kind of dumb data. But then what you built on the other end, on the ROCK Robotic, on the cloud, the processing, not having to do manual strip alignment, the way that the IMU calibrates the trajectory and the positioning is very streamlined. To anybody who's ever used any other kind of LiDAR system, it's not streamlined. So, you're
gonna go and you'd process a trajectory, then you'd make a point cloud, then you'd cut strips out of the point cloud, then you'd strip align the point cloud, and then you'd merge those strips back into a final point cloud, and then you've just got the dumb data, like you said.
Yeah. Then you're at the starting line.
And then so all of that is, thank you. That was very important to us. It's cool to hear someone seeing that, because it is. My experience with LiDAR was very different whenever I got into it. It was not this. So
it's not easy to extract good data out, to ground classify or classify points or clean up point clouds, and the things that the ROCK algorithms do on the back end. They do it really well, and it makes the process of getting the deliverable to your surveyor or whoever it is really, really, really simple. It's awesome. Y'all created a good solution.
I think we got one last question, and then we're gonna sign off here. Kind of going a little bit long today.
Hey guys,
but
this is Curtis. Can you hear me?
Hey, Curtis.
Yeah.
I'm behind the curtain over here. We ended up with like 3 or 4 more questions that will be unanswered. So if y'all want to go back in the group chat afterwards and address them. This last question, I promise, is not a plant. And by way of prefacing it, I'll say Daniel and Harrison, you guys cannot answer it. Okay. So I'm going to put it up, and then Josh can handle it.
Well, I'm just going to leave then.
Which software is best for data processing? Well, it depends on what data you're wanting to process. If you're wanting to do LiDAR data, there is a lot of different software that you can use. I like that hat. Exactly. I mean, if you're, again, like another reason that I went with ROCK Robotic was that the data processing side. They have very lightweight software to run to process this stuff, because handling with large data sets, you need a beast of a computer, whether you're dealing with photogrammetry or LiDAR. But being able to have a cloud visualizer to where you can work and manipulate that data on ROCK servers is going to save you big time. So if it's LiDAR, go with ROCK Robotic. The ROCK Cloud. If it's photogrammetry software, my favorites are Pix4D Mapper and Agisoft Metashape. I like Agisoft because you have more control over geoid models and you have a little more control over your data. But yeah,
awesome
stuff.
Great job.
Well, cool, guys. Thanks so much, Josh, for being on the show today. I think everyone learned a lot, and we have a few questions that we'll reach out and answer those in the comment sections there. But thanks again for joining us on another Drone Money podcast. And we're going to have a next episode on Tuesday, March the 28th. So stay tuned for that one. And please let us know if you have anything you would like to see. We'll see you on the next one.
Thanks, Josh.
Thanks guys.
Josh.